Okay, let me just get this ready. Okay, hello everyone. This is Dwight Woods, Jeet Kune Rebel, and we're here on the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast once more. This is broadcast number 14. Kind of cool that it's being done on Wednesday the 14th. What do you call today? Ash Wednesday and what's the other one? Valentine's Day. All right. So this is the one about who can teach Jeet Kune Do. Let me give you a little bit of background on this. It came, as some of you know, I answer some Jeet Kune Do related questions on Quora.com, and this happened to come up, and so then I shared it on my other Facebook page, and then I thought, last week we had talked about last week was the one all about the threes, right? The stages of combat and that kind of stuff. And I had promised that we would do something about Bruce Lee quotes this week. But when this thing about teaching Jeet Kune Do came up, I thought, you know what, that's going to be a pretty hot topic. So let's delve into that today. Let me do the t-shirt thing for my friend. Here you go. Okay. So I wish that, in all honesty, I wish I had a better answer to the question, who can teach Jeet Kune Do, than this answer. Just about anybody who cares to hang his or her shingle out and declare themselves a Jeet Kune Do instructor. That is the God-honest truth. And the reason why that is the truth is because there's never been any attempt to control how Jeet Kune Do is disseminated around the world. And there's never been any attempt to create a central governing body, let's call it. Now, I know that there was once a thing called the Jeet Kune Do Society, and then more recently, like 20 years ago, there was another thing called the Jeet Kune Do Nucleus, right? But truth is, we've never been able to stop people from doing whatever it is that they want to do. And so, unfortunately, out there in the free market of martial arts, it's going to be up to the person who is seeking out a Jeet Kune Do instructor to do his or her due diligence if they come across somebody who claims to be a JKD instructor. So let's go back to the beginning and talk about how this started. So we all know that Bruce Lee came back to the U.S. in 1959 and landed first in San Francisco and then proceeded up to Seattle, Washington. And so if we start with people who can teach Jeet Kune Do, we can start with Bruce Lee's first appointed assistant, Taki Kimura, in Seattle. Now, so we have Taki Kimura as, even though the Jeet Kune Do, the term itself, was coined in 1967. As a matter of fact, I left something. Okay, I'm going to go off camera for 2 seconds. You guys just enjoy the picture of Cedro Bruce and of Bob Marley. Okay, that's that. I had to go get my reference material for today, which is Inside Kung Fu. What is this? July 1988. Right. So in here, there's a thing called Inosanto. Man, I can never get this camera right. Okay, there we go. Inosanto sets the record straight. And so what this is it says Dan Inosanto tries to calm the confusion running rampant within JKD circles. He says, if you didn't study with Bruce Lee, you can't call it Jeet Kune Do, right? Okay, so there are some people who will take that absolutely literally, right? Without understanding that this is a thing that's from what, 30 years ago, right? So here's what it says. The following words were written by Bruce Lee in 1970, right? I have not invented a new style, composite, modified, or otherwise that is set within distinct form as apart from this method or that method. On the contrary, I hope to free my followers from clinging to styles, patterns, or molds. Remember that Jeet Kune Do is merely a name used, a mirror in which to see ourselves. And what was the other part? Jeet Kune Do is not an organized institution that one can be a member of. Either you understand or you don't, and that is that. I did have my Jun Fan Kung Fu Institute, but since then, I neither believe in system, Chinese or not Chinese, nor organization, right? Okay, cool. So this is written 48 years ago. Now, you can be a stickler for precision, let's call it, and you can say, if that's what Bruce Lee wrote almost 50 years ago, I'm sticking to that, and that's how I'm guiding myself. So Jeet Kune Do cannot be an organization that one can be a member of, and that's how I'm going to roll with it, right? You can do that. Or you can try to organize, for lack of a different expression, in order for the art and the philosophy to perpetuate and be relevant decades from now. Okay? So going back to who can teach, we have Taki Kimura as the first assistant in Seattle. Then we have the Oakland era, right? So I'm going to come back towards the end of the broadcast, and I'm going to name as many names as I can, and I'll have to do it off the top of my head because, in all honesty, my for some reason my Microsoft Word crashed on me, and my original document that I'd been working on since last night disappeared. And so I had to do a rush job on this one, right? So I'll probably have to do stuff from memory. So hope that my brain's working. So then from the Seattle era, we went on to Oakland, and that's where James Lee was the number 2 in command, right? Then after Oakland, we come down to Los Angeles, and it's in Los Angeles that the term Jeet Kune Do is coined, right? Now, if I can find the picture, I'm going to show you why it is that I dispute the date, right? Everybody says that, and I think there's even t-shirts and what have you that say that Jeet Kune Do was coined in 1967. I say it was coined in 1966, and my evidence for that, we don't knock over no cameras or anything here, is, can you see it? Let me see. Yeah, so it's this sign here. The one that says my followers in Jeet Kune Do, do listen to this. That thing is dated, if you can see at the bottom here, it's dated 1966. So that's my contention that the term Jeet Kune Do was actually coined in 1966, not 1967, right? Okay, so everybody knows, or everybody should know, that when the Chinatown School was opened up, in which I think that actually happened in '67, when the Chinatown School opened up, Dan Inosanto was the actual Sifu, and Bruce Lee was more of the Qigong, because 90% of the classes during the 2 years, I think, that they were open were taught by Dan Inosanto, and 10% of the classes were taught by Bruce Lee, and Dan Inosanto assisted Bruce Lee in the 10% of the classes that he taught, right? So in this same article here, the one that says Bruce Lee explains Jeet Kune Do, it says, so far, I have only 3 assistants teaching for me when I cannot be there. Taki Kimura, a friend and capable qualified assistant for over 10 years, teaches occasionally in Seattle, Washington. James Lee, an ex-Kung Fu instructor, closed his school and has a club in Oakland, California. And Dan Inosanto teaches as his hobby here in Southern California. Right? Both Taki and James are more steeped in the Chinese system because they met me at the earlier stages of my development. Consequently, whenever I see them, I try to liberate them more from one way to no way and to walk the pathless path. Dan met me during the midst of my evolution, though he has less training than Iva Taki or James, right? So again, this was written almost 50 years ago, 1970 or so. So a lot has changed in that time. Let's just cut to it right now, because like I said, I'm trying to do some of this from memory and then from my recovered document here, right? So in 1970, after Bruce Lee left for Hong Kong, right, and he told Inosanto to close the Chinatown school, take the most dedicated people to your backyard and train them there. And that's what they did for about 4 years until Bruce Lee passed away. And then in 1974, they opened up what was officially called the Filipino Kali Academy and Junfan Gung Fu Academy of Los Angeles, right? Because they wanted to have somewhere to simultaneously promote the Filipino martial arts, but also have a rallying point for further evolution of the Jeet Kune Do method. Right? So in the beginning, at the Kali Academy, as it came to be known, there was what they called the phase system. Right? So my understanding from my senior Chris Kent is that the phase system was based on the idea of 4 phases in college, right? Where you have the freshman, you have the sophomore, the junior, and the senior. So you had 4 phases at the Kali Academy, and then you could be voted into the Jeet Kune Do class. And it was an extremely informal thing. There was no difference in uniform as such. I imagine that sometimes people probably didn't even wear uniforms. And so you might be told by Richard Bustillo or Dan Inosanto, okay, tomorrow you're in this phase, or tomorrow you're in that phase. When it came to the Jeet Kune Do class, then everybody who was already a member of the Jeet Kune Do class kind of had to vote on you in order for you to be let in to that, right? So this is 1974 that the Kali Academy is opened up. If I have my history correct, in 1979, Aspen Academy of Martial Arts, that was the first time that they opened up to do a big seminar, right? And so Inosanto was one of the featured instructors at Aspen Academy. Aspen Academy ran for, I think... let me see if I have the math right. I think they ran for about 3 years or so, up until 1982. And then, again, if I have my history correct, a guy who had attended Aspen named Jay D'Amato in 1982 started the CMAA, California Martial Arts Academy. All right, and so at CMAA, there were people like Dan Inosanto teaching, I think Larry Hartzell and Tim Tackett. At least in 1983 when I went, let's see if I can remember. Dan Inosanto was teaching the Filipino martial arts, assisted by Cass Magda. Larry Hartzell and Tim Tackett were teaching the Jeet Kune Do class. Francis Fong was there for Wing Chun. Stephen Hayes was there for ninjutsu. Daniel Doobie was supposed to have a Savat seminar, but I think that got canceled. And who else? Bill Wallace, Bill Superfoot Wallace was there teaching kickboxing, and that's everybody that I can remember, right? And so. This is 1983, but that whole seminar thing started towards the end of 79 and the beginning of 1980. CMAA ran up until 1986, I think, 85 or 86. And then a guy that I personally met at CMAA, Vic Payne, he started the Smoky Mountain Camp in 1986, and I think that one ran for about 10 years. I'm giving you all of this history and background so that you understand how the dissemination of Jeet Kune Do information grew into a worldwide phenomenon. Because now with all the seminars, as a matter of fact, if you're old enough, or if you can get your hands on a pre-1983, let's say, Inside Kung Fu or Karate Illustrated magazine. If you look in the back at the events, it would be tournament, 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 tournament. But by the mid-1980s, that event calendar had been replaced pretty much by seminar, 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 right? So I'm giving you the background so that you understand what we're talking about, how it is that different people came to be certified, allowed, permitted, or whatever to teach Jeet Kune Do, right? Another set of seminars that came about was a thing called the Northeast Conference, which my good friend Kevin Seaman helmed up in New York, and then there was also the equivalent Southeast Conference, which was helmed by Sifu Francis Fong in Georgia, right? And at some point there was another thing that came up called what was it called? I forget what it was called. Karate Academy or something. I forget what it was called, but it was at Radford University, or University of Virginia Radford or something, right? Okay, so that's significant to a certain degree. So there's a lot of seminars going on. There's people coming from all over the USA and from all over the world. And the idea then of being able to spread Jeet Kune Do around the world, literally around the world, that comes into mind. And so just like with the 4 phases previously, Sifu Dan came up with the idea of, well, I think it was him and some other people. They came with the idea of having 4 levels of instructor. So there's apprentice instructor, there's associate instructor, there's full instructor, and then there's senior full instructor, right? Remember that, you know, sometimes you'll hear some people say, oh, well, there's no ranking system, or there's no belts, or there's no whatever in Jeet Kune Do. That's dead wrong. Right? Again, in this same magazine, let me find it here for you. In this same magazine, there is the depiction of Bruce Lee's ranking system, right? And actually, on the Jeet Kune Do Wednesday night group's website, I think you can find an easy copy there to read. But it does show the 3 ranking systems. There was one that Bruce Lee used from 1965 to 1968. Then there was a second one that was used from 68 and then disbanded in 69. And then Sifu Dan says he reinstated it in his backyard school in 1970 and then dropped it in 1974. So apparently in 74, when the Kali Academy started, this ranking system might have been dropped. And then the Junfan Gung Fu clan, in pursuit of Jeet Kune Do concepts, ranking system reinstated in 1988 by Taki Kimura and Dan Inosanto. So I think unless things have changed, this is the one that everybody is working on right now. So that goes unranked, first rank, second rank, third rank, fourth rank. Second rank is the advanced student who is eligible for apprentice instructor. Third rank is associate instructor. Fourth rank is full instructor. Fifth rank is senior full instructor. And then sixth rank is Dan Inosanto. Seventh rank is Taki Kimura. And eighth rank is Bruce Lee. So you really can't go past fifth rank in this current ranking system. All right. So another thing that affected the whole instructor certification was something that grew out of, I think that it grew out of something that happened in Inside Kung Fu. So Sifu Dan was writing his column for Inside Kung Fu called In the 20th Century. And when he stopped writing that column, it was replaced by Ted Wong's column called Classical Jeet Kune Do. Now, in the 20th century, I think, this is my opinion, Sifu Dan probably named it that way in order to show how Jeet Kune Do was continuing to evolve in the 20th century. My understanding is that Ted Wong called his column Classical Jeet Kune Do, not to differentiate it from anything else, but the same way that classic could refer to a work of art, right? So like a piece of music, a painting or something, maybe an old car that you call a classic, Ted Wong considered Jeet Kune Do to be a work of art, and so he called it classical Jeet Kune Do. Of course, it didn't help that Sifu Dan had taken to talking on seminar, saying that he no longer taught Jeet Kune Do, that he taught Jeet Kune Do concepts, right? And so people started to believe then that there was this difference. And then I think it was out of that Karate Academy thing in Virginia that the term original Jeet Kune Do was born. That's why I said it's of significance. So if I have my historical facts correct, the term original Jeet Kune Do was not birthed by someone within the Jeet Kune Do clan. It was actually birthed by outsiders. But now, those terms, Jeet Kune Do concepts, original Jeet Kune Do, classical Jeet Kune Do, Ted Wong, Dan Inosanto, and now, because there's a demand for knowledge of Jeet Kune Do, other people start coming onto the seminar scene. So people who might have been teaching privately, people who might not even have been teaching, they might still have been training, or they may not have started, but people started to come out of the woodwork. And I mean, it was impossible for Dan Inosanto to quench the thirst, right, of all the people who wanted to do stuff in it and learn stuff in Jeet Kune Do. Another thing that affected this is that in 1984, The Karate Kid was released, and now the idea of martial arts not being a thing just for adults, martial art not just being a backyard thing or a hobbyist thing, but now martial art being a full-time, lucrative, professional career, that came into being also. So all of this stuff starts to happen in the mid-1980s. So now we have different generations of instructors, because another group of people who started to gain notoriety were Inosanto's younger instructors. So we have the guys, so I'll name names as best as I can. So we have the old timers, let's call them. It's a term of affection, right? You have the old timers from Bruce Lee's days. So we have Bob Bremer, Pete Jacobs, Steve Golden, Jerry Poteet, Larry Hartzell. That's what I can remember right off the top of my head. Now, the younger generation of people who are, people are encountering them at the Inosanto Academy, or they're encountering them at Jeet Kune Do seminars, right? So there's people like Chris Kent, Ted Lukai, Blaze Lung, Jeff Chun, Freddie Jin, Steve Nakamura, Cass Magda, and Paul Vunak, right? Again, those are the names that come to mind. Burton Richardson, these are the names that come to mind immediately. And so there's a lot of information that's required, and there are a lot of people who are now entering into the seminar market. So if you think about it, Jeet Kune Do, the term being coined 1966, 1967, that's a lot of time for there to be multiple generations of students. So just like in any family, you have the original patriarch and matriarch, and then you have, so you have maybe, the great-grandfather, then you have the grandfather, then you have the father, right? And then you have the sons and the daughters, and then they have their own kids. So we have, for example, my Sifu is Dan Inosanto, right? Which makes Bruce Lee my Sigung. But for my students, Dan Inosanto is their Sigung, and Bruce Lee is their Si Taigung. For all of us, Bruce Lee is the Sijo, which is the founder of the system, or the clan elder, as we call it. So today, if somebody is interested in studying with a legitimate instructor, you could end up with somebody who trained under someone who trained directly under Bruce Lee / Dan Inosanto. You could end up under training under somebody who was trained primarily by Dan Inosanto or people like Jerry Poteet, because he had, rest his soul, he had his own organization, the Jeet Kune Do Wednesday night group. So, I should mention the people who came in the mid 70s, like Chris Kent and Jeff Imada and Tim Tackett, right? And so now today in the modern era, we have people who have set up their own instructor organizations. Dan Inosanto might have the biggest group, but I wouldn't be surprised to find out that he has maybe the second biggest group, because Paul Vunak has been prolific and very, very capable in building his organization. So Paul's organization is called Progressive Fighting System. Burton Richardson's organization is Jeet Kune Do Unlimited. Cass Magda's, there's the Magda Institute. Cass's umbrella term is the Buka Jalan system, I believe. Chris Kent, I don't know that Chris has a formal name for his organization, but Chris does have his own group of certified instructors. Ted Wong, rest his soul, he became very, very popular on the seminar circuit also, and Ted has his group of certified people. Jerry Poteet, I think I mentioned, and he's got some very capable people. One that comes to mind is Octavio Quintero. Let's see, who else is there? I should mention one of my favorite Jeet Kune Do people of all time, right, who is, like me, not a Los Angeles-based instructor, and this is Rick Fay of Minnesota Kali Group fame and notoriety up in Minnesota. Yeah, that's why it's called Minnesota Kali Group. Rick is a standout because I believe he is one of the first people to be promoted to the level of senior full instructor outside of California, right? So let me think of some other names. Ron Balicki is another very capable instructor with his own group. If I forget anybody, it's just because I'm trying to do this from memory and not from my notes, which, you know, I lost. So my advice to anybody who is seeking out competent Jeet Kune Do instruction is to make sure that you're studying with someone whose lineage does not come into question. See, because here's what has happened. There are some people who kind of take advantage of a spurious association with Jeet Kune Do, right? So sometimes you have people who were never, maybe they did do some training, but they were never certified as an instructor, but then they might be in an area or in a situation where they know more than the people surrounding them, and so they're able to pass themselves off as instructors even if their level is suspect and they don't necessarily have depth of knowledge. That has happened, right? I mean, it happens in all martial arts systems, but Jeet Kune Do, because like I said at the beginning of the broadcast, since we've never had a central governing body, because it's not really something that you can do, it leaves the art and the promotion of the art open to, you know, just about any kind of ne'er-do-well nefarious characters, right? Another thing that might cause confusion for some people is that there are people who were well known as Jeet Kune Do practitioners and exponents, and who with the explosion of the UFC and MMA and what have you, then their Jeet Kune Do their Jeet Kune Do titles may have been supplanted by their titles in Muay Thai or their titles in in the grappling arts, like in BJJ or what have you, right? And that's another area where there's contention between the different schools of thought. Some people will say that if you're real Jeet Kune Do, then you what you get from training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is integrated into your Jeet Kune Do. So what they mean is that Jeet Kune Do should remain at the top, so to speak, at the forefront of what it is that you're doing, and then everything else is subjugated to that. So your Muay Thai training, your Penjak Silat training, your BJJ training, and whatever else is supposed to be subjugated to your Jeet Kune Do, right? Then there's some people who, because they're running a professional establishment, right, then they have to cater to what the market demands. And so you might have to run separate classes. And so there's some people who we know them to be Jeet Kune Do exponents, but if you look on their class schedule, Jeet Kune Do might not show up at all, right? Because they're catering to the market and what have you. I know some people who the Jeet Kune Do in their commercial establishments, and commercial is not a bad word, right? Their Jeet Kune Do is entirely private and behind the scenes, because what they do in their establishment to make a living allows them the ability to continue to do Jeet Kune Do, which is their heart's delight, in private and behind closed doors. So they have a commercial martial art establishment as the face, but then Jeet Kune Do operates in the background. And there's more than one way. What's the saying? There's more than one way to skin a cat, right? And so if that's the approach that works for somebody, then that's the way to go. That's the thing that brings up another issue. There's some people who will complain that Bruce Lee never used belts. And so how is it that there are people who claim to be teaching Jeet Kune Do and they have a belt system for what it is that they're doing? That's something that, again, if they're not ripping people off, if everything's being done with integrity, and anybody who's listened to me talk on the broadcast before knows how I feel about it. As long as you're not ripping people off, then whatever it is that works for you, that's fine, right? So for some people, they'll never use belts. They'll never have a ranking system, and that will work for them. Then there are other people who have found it necessary, right, to do such a thing. Bruce Lee did have a ranking system. It was a colored ranking system. True, he may not have used belts towards the end, but somebody might make the contention that there are pictures of Bruce Lee in the Seattle era where everybody used the Gung Fu uniforms and everybody wore a colored sash, right? So there's more than one way. So anyhow, so as to who can teach Jeet Kune Do, here are the people that you have to watch out for. There are a lot of people who set themselves up as Jeet Kune Do instructors, and then when you ask them, well, what's your lineage? Or if you ask them, well, can you provide a certificate that shows you as a legitimately qualified instructor, they cannot. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not skilled, right? As a matter of fact, at one point, and I'll use his name because this is not by any shape or form a put down, because I know this guy personally, and some people in the Jeet Kune Do world are very unaffectionate towards him, and some people are affectionate towards him. What impressed me when I met Lamar Davis was his absolute dedication to Bruce Lee and the Jeet Kune Do ideal. And I think that, so there might have been a time where people, criticize him for not having a legitimate background or something, but to the best of my knowledge, Lamar Davis has trained with about 5 of the original Jeet Kune Do people, and my understanding is that he's certified by all of them. Right. So now I'm not here to I'm not giving Lamar Davis my blessing, or he doesn't need my blessing. I'm just trying to point out that there might be people out there that you will hear somebody else criticizing, but if you do your own research on them, you'll find out that they are legitimate, right? And I know that at one point there was some contention with Lamar in Alabama, but I have always been been very impressed by his dedication to Bruce Lee and the Jeet Kune Do ideal, right? But there are some other people out there who may have had some training in the past and then did nothing to legitimize their qualifications, and they continue to pass themselves off as Jeet Kune Do instructors. Now, in the spirit of magnanimity, can you learn something from them? Yeah, probably, right? But should they legitimize what they're doing? Yeah, they probably should. Because who's going to study Kyokushin karate from somebody who is not qualified, right? If you can't show a black belt certificate in Shotokan or Kyokushin or Goju-Ryu or something, nobody's going to think that you're legitimate. So why should people consider you legitimate if you can't show an instructor's certificate in Jeet Kune Do? And that's part of the problem for us never having been able to organize Jeet Kune Do, so to speak. But again, if it was Bruce Lee's original wish that Jeet Kune Do not be an organization, then I think the people that he entrusted to care and promote Jeet Kune Do, if they don't want to form organizations, then they don't have to. But that doesn't mean that their students cannot. Because as Sifu Dan says, he's the one who made the promise to not commercialize Jeet Kune Do. But his students never made that promise to Bruce Lee. And so they have his full permission to do what they do with integrity. So that's it. Who can teach Jeet Kune Do? There's legitimate people. There's illegitimate people. There's no control over it, so to speak, except within people, the organizations that legitimate people have formed for themselves. I apologize if there was any good friends, Jeet Kune Do friends of mine and associates whose names I forgot to mention, but I was trying to do it in a rush out of memory. So my apologies if anybody feels slighted by my not mentioning them. I'm trying to run through my brain and call some names out. Anyhow, so if anybody in the I Love Jeet Kune Do group, if you've got a question about someone's legitimacy or whatever, get in touch with me. I'll do the research for you. More likely than not, depending on what era they're from, I probably know them personally, right? There's a lot of good people out there all over the country, all over the world. Maybe one day I will get a full list, because in 1988 Sifu Dan did show a list of people, and I'll tell you a funny story about that. The list continued on a subsequent page, but you know how in the magazines they put continued on such and such page? They neglected to do that, and so a lot of people didn't see some people's names on that list, and so they started to doubt their legitimacy. But then if you scroll through to the back of the magazine, the list continued, right? So unfortunately, people whose last name started with V or W or what have you, they didn't appear on the initial pages, right? Anyhow, so that's it on who can teach Jeet Kune Do. Remember that we have available for you guys. Just go to I Love Jeet Kune Do. You can see the Jeet Kune Do group's quick skills series over there. Take a look at that. We actually have some free video stuff available for you on that page also, right? Next week, we'll get back to maybe 2 of Bruce Lee's more popular sayings, and we'll delve into that and deconstruct them. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel. You guys out there in the I Love Jeet Kune Do world, have a great evening. Happy Valentine's. I'm not sure if you say Happy Ash Wednesday. I don't think you do, right? So those of you who are associated romantically, Happy Valentine's to you. I'll see you next week, back at 3 p.m. I had some personal stuff to deal with today, and I'll see you then. Take care.